What's up, everybody? This is Cyrus coming at you with a video tonight. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning here in Jakarta, Indonesia. So I'm staying up until 5 o'clock because I'm doing an Afterlife University class, which is 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that is 5 o'clock in the morning, my time. But that's just, it's what you gotta do. And then I'll teach the class until about 6:15, and then I'll crawl to bed and then sleep until 2 p.m. So that's how it is when I'm in Asia. But it's cool. I'm happy to do it. I just have to adjust my sleep schedule a little bit. So while I wait to do the class, I had some thoughts in my mind I wanted to get off my chest, at least as it relates to spiritual paths in life and in particular, the concept of the inner child and why this is almost like an experimental path of spiritual fulfillment that I am on and have been on for quite a few years. And it's something maybe for other people to try out. And so I want to talk about that and how I feel like this is something that could really help a lot of people in our Western culture who really lose track of that part of themselves and need to find a way to rediscover it. So I want to talk about that. Before we get started, as usual, if you hit the subscribe button, that'll really help this channel out. You can hit the notification bell, you can hit the like button. All of that goes a long way to help keep this channel growing. So to continue, so as some of you know who watch this channel or have read my books, I do a lot of traveling. So I'm here in Indonesia at the moment. I'm in an Airbnb in Jakarta. It's like I want to say my second time, really my third time in Jakarta, because it's a fun place in many ways because the people are so friendly and there's such a nice interconnected feeling among Indonesians, which that's a whole separate subject. But I love coming to Indonesia, as well as a lot of other places, and it doesn't, break the bank to have a lifestyle like this, because think about it this way: rent in Los Angeles, a cheap place, is $800 a month, whereas if I'm in Asia, a place like this is not even $400 a month, and then going out to eat is a fraction of the cost. You end up saving money traveling like this. So if you want to travel like this, if you don't have major attachments in your life, if you're not raising kids, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can become an English teacher, or you can just get a job on your laptop, something like, transcribe stuff, get a transcription job. Some people are copywriters, and then, the more techie people are programmers, and so they're coding, whatever it might be. There's a million things that you can do on the internet. You can part-time, and then that can help fund your way around as you go to different Airbnbs, go to hostels, explore places, and have fun if that's what you like to do. But not everybody likes to do that. I think it's not a path for everybody, but it is kind of a path for me, at least at this point, and I'm going to explain why. So this relates to the inner child. When I was, of course, a kid, just like everybody else, I had this amazing interconnected feeling to all my hobbies and things that I was into, in a way that I, as well as probably everybody else who grows up, doesn't have anymore. Hold on, my faucet is dripping, and I'm afraid that's going to be picked up in my microphone. It's going to drive me crazy. Let me just turn it off. Okay. Anyway, so when I was a kid, I had this interconnected sense with the things that I was into, and my memories of that are very, very pleasant. Now, don't get me wrong, I would not want to be Cyrus as a kid again. The reason for that is that Cyrus as a kid was a very imbalanced personality. I would throw tantrums if I couldn't get my way. It's like I was operating from this very, very primitive, id consciousness. And I think id consciousness is a better terminology than saying ego, because the id, I think, is the real issue sometimes. So very undeveloped in many ways. There's no way Cyrus as a kid could handle what Cyrus as an adult is able to handle. Cyrus as an adult can travel and do really cool stuff and create things, or make websites, make films, and make books, and all this stuff that's really awesome. So I wouldn't trade how I am now for when I was a kid. I'm pretty darn happy as an adult, but there's certain abilities that I had as a kid that lessened as I got older. I think for me, less than other people. I maintained some of these abilities much more than my friends did, but that's involved a lot of introspection and a lot of basically spiritual self-development work. So real quick, just to illustrate, I want to talk about some of the things I was really into when I was a kid. Yes, you get to look at my Google search history. That is Jesus riding a dinosaur at the bottom of the Google search. Let's see, Magic. So I love the card game Magic: The Gathering. So if that's after your time, I know my median audience range, according to my analytics, is age 60. So you might not know about this kind of stuff. Let me make it more specific. So this was a trading card game. What made it very special is that back when I was playing it when I was like 9 years old, every card features like different art from different artists. So eventually the game became very corporate, and then they just had the same artist do everything. People messaging me on Facebook. I turn off my. I'm just gonna turn my volume down. I think that'll solve that. Okay. So there was back then different artists for every card, and every card had a different monetary value attached to it. And there was some cards in very high demand and others not in high demand. And also every card with the art had a story attached to it. So as an example, let me click on this one. Here we have the Vesuvan Doppelganger. And so when you're playing the game, like this card will copy one of your opponent's creature cards and become an exact copy. And then if you look, that's like some really cool artwork, right? It's like really neat. And then some of the cards, they have a lot of storyline added to it as well, so you can read about the idea behind the premise. Like here's these these reanimated skeletons, and it has a little story on it that talks about what the card is. Here's the Royal Assassin. It says, trained in the arts of stealth, the Royal Assassins chose their victims carefully, relying on timing and precision rather than brute force. And it all relates to the storyline of this world that the creators of the game made. So I really loved this when I was 9 years old. Like every single card I got into, I really enjoyed the storyline, and I got really obsessed with playing socially with people, and I was obsessed with trading cards with others. Whether it's kids my age or up to teenagers and adults. Like I was wheeling and dealing like a business person. And then interestingly enough, recently some of those cards that I traded for back when I was 9 and 10 years old. I finally cashed in those investments that I was making back then, hoping to someday make a bunch of money off of it. I made a few $1,000. It was my 9-year-old self making money for me, as an adult. The point is that I was just really into this and I loved it. And, my ability to have a lot of fun with this was dependent a little bit on my older brother, because, when I'm 9 and 10 years old, I couldn't go off to the hobby shop by myself. And when my brother was over all of this, then I couldn't, keep playing with people, and that bummed me out. But I still loved the game a lot, and I remember, getting so into, my imagination going wild with every single storyline, every single card concept. So what else was I into? Books. Back then, reading a book was an exciting thing. Like reading a fiction novel. I would read novel for 2 or 3 hours, and then the rest of the day I'd be thinking about the novel, right? There was another game I played a lot, which is still super popular, which is Warhammer 40,000. So this was a very dark, very dark science fiction story, but it also manifested as a tabletop game. And what made it very, very special was that when you played this game, you had these miniatures that it was a basically it still is it's like almost like it's a major competition, especially in England, to how artistically you can paint the miniatures, and it's a huge skill to get good at doing this. And it's like you have to basically train yourself, and it takes months and months of practice to get really good at it. And so my brother was an expert, and so he would win all these awards, and then I was always striving to get almost as good as like my brother and some of his friends who were doing it like semi-professionally, and I got pretty darn good at it, but I always held myself to these high standards. I think I ranked a bit in some of the hobby shops too. I mean, now I was like 10 years old, but again, it's just like I was so into this. It's like I would wake up, eat breakfast, and then be excited and think about, Warhammer for the rest of the day. So always fun, always exciting, and especially like learning how to paint these figures and amassing this collection. And I still have them back in Arizona, like all these actually really nicely painted figures. So I was like 10 years old, and I was pulling off some pretty great artwork back then. And and then there were like magazines and like hobby magazines and things that related to this game, as well as Magic and other ones. And I would read those, and I'd get into that, and I'd keep up with with all of it. I was very, very connected. Back then was the early days of the internet. We used America Online. America Online chats, 1990s. Put that in Google and see what comes up. So why was this a hobby? Because back then there were two things that were really popular in America Online. One is you had these like fake hacker groups. Well, I don't care about the history of sex on the internet. That's not what I was looking at. And back then it was all uncensored. So I'm like, I'm 11 years old on America Online. There's these chats of people trading pornography, and I'm mature enough to know all that is, but. Of course, I'm just like, these people suck, and I hadn't, I didn't need any parental filters. My parents didn't even know what was going on because they didn't know what the internet, barely knew what it was. And I was really into the hacker communities, which was not really hacking, but it's like people would download programs to manipulate the AOL software, and sometimes the programs were like secret and difficult to get a hold of, but I would find ways to find them, and then I would download them and then trade them with other people, and kind of find ways to raise hell on AOL. But there was big communities, and it was like it's kind of underground thing, and it was a lot of fun. And the second thing I was into were these role-playing groups. And so the role-playing groups were huge because back in the late 90s, no one else had anything to do on the internet besides, there was no like computer games that, were as widespread as today. So all the, young people, they all had to find ways to entertain themselves in chat rooms. And so they concocted these role-playing games, which ended up becoming these huge, like, dramatic storylines that people would concoct and, write out together. And that was something I was really into. And that's something I'd be thinking about all day and having fun with, and, just being heavily involved with, and, being really wrapped up into it. So to end this tangent, why do I bring this all up? How does that relate to me traveling these days? What I came to find out was that a lot of my friends were a bit older than me, and so I watched as the whole like childhood having fun and doing cool stuff train kind of like ended, and I saw quote unquote real life begin to hit people. One friend suddenly has a girlfriend and is just obsessed with her and stopped going out and doing things with me or anybody else. Paintball, that was another big part of when I was a kid, but I'm not gonna go into all my hobbies when I was a kid. I don't want to make this video 2 hours long. But like a friend of mine, bam, he ends up with a girlfriend, only focused on that. It's the only thing that matters. His girlfriend was kind of cool, like I liked her, but he completely changed. He was a bit naive, jumping into a relationship. Soon she's pregnant. Soon he has kids. Soon they're breaking up. Soon he's a single father. Soon he's working, 7 days a week to keep the kids going. That's it at that point. Like, no more fun, no more good times. That's his whole life. My brother, not as extreme as that, but he's quite a bit older than me. But I saw all the things he was passionate about start to kind of go by the wayside once he ended up getting married. His wife was really cool, and she was into all the stuff he was into, so you'd think that he wouldn't stop pursuing his hobbies, but he just kind of did anyway. I saw a lot of that lust for life kind of go away, and I think that was caused again by work. We were both kind of isolated, living on a ranch. I think he underestimated how stressful the real world could be. I saw him get his first, kind of adult jobs, working for companies, and it seemed to just take that spark of life right out of him. And ceremonially, he'd keep playing games or doing hobbies, sometimes with me, up until a certain point where he just kind of phased out, right? So that's disappointing. So one thing after another, I saw how all that basically hit everybody. Now I'm a bit younger by a few years sometimes, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I gotta figure a strategy out to keep my marbles intact. Around the same time, I was getting into spirituality and topics we talk about here, and thinking about all that stuff a lot, and also just thinking about philosophy and how to stay happy in life. And I thought to myself way back then, it's like, I have to have a life that is not going to put me down the same vortex spiral of death that sucked down everybody else I've known. So my realization when it comes to the inner child and why there are elements of being a kid that were so much fun, it doesn't have to do with some biological difference so much. In fact, when I was a kid, obviously I was a lot more immature, but I was a lot less developed and advanced as a person. But the thing is that when you don't have a million other things on your mind, you can focus all of your energy, your attention, and your love in a singular direction or on a few different things at one time. So you have all of your energy focused on something like, I don't know, a collectible card game, instead of how about your health, sicknesses, making money, making rent, taking care of loved ones, hardships, trials, and on all these complications in life. And so you have that capability of having this mono focus. Now, what's interesting about that is that something I've discovered much later on, when we talk about astral projection, is that on the other side, I feel like that sensation comes back, because by definition, the astral side doesn't have the endless complications and issues that we deal with here. So people who have hobbies on that side, people who are into whatever it might be, it brings about that spiritual kind of unity monofocus. Once again, just like when you were a kid. And so I developed almost these memories of a life on that side where I'm so connected and into the things I'm doing that it's similar to memories of being a kid in this side, but with stuff I'm doing on that side. And I'm gifted in that sense because I have ability to have certain memories of my life in these other realms that we talk about in this channel. And so the final sort of big takeaway point, what led to this sort of experimental spiritual path that I've been on for a long time, is how can I take that concept and bring it into my adult life. Traveling, it turned out, is one way of doing that. Because when you're with other travelers especially, and when you're seeing different parts of the world, it's a temporary period when these other travelers who are also adults, could be between the ages of 18 and 60 plus, who knows. They've put aside all their worldly cares, at least temporarily. They've taken 2 weeks aside to be in Japan or be in Indonesia or wherever. And they're just engaged to the moment, they're having fun, and they wake up and all they're thinking about is the place they're in, the place they're traveling to. I'll be going to Japan soon and checking out the cherry blossoms in Osaka. And people, book months in advance to see the cherry blossoms. And so I'm staying in a hostel full of people, and there's probably going to be people that are just so excited to see the cherry blossoms. That's going to be, all their love and attention is going to be focused on that. So it would actually be a return to this state of consciousness among those people. So the big question is, can I model my life in this way? Some would call it the inner child, but I think I would just call it higher consciousness living. That the worldly cares are of less priority, that I have the self-development to handle them, to not have to worry about them. Making money and stuff is hopefully integrated a bit with like the things I care about or I'm passionate about. I don't have big existential crises or things in the back of my mind to worry about. And can I learn to find a profound sense of happiness and interconnectedness and unity consciousness with individual pursuits and things that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. Whether that is doing some hobby on the computer or being in a new location, traveling, exploring, meeting people, all of that, can I return to that kind of state of joy, exploration, and creation? Now, it won't ever be completely like when I was a kid, but I can have that to a much greater extent, and this creates, well, in many ways, this is spiritual development, and that's something we can all work on. So those are my thoughts for tonight about the inner child and the inner child as a spiritual path in life that you can follow. And it's not easy because these cares in the world are all-encompassing, and I very carefully made a strategy in my life to minimize a lot of these issues. But I understand that for a lot of us, it's just not going to happen easily. A lot of us, we carry the weight of grief and trauma and issues, but it's a noble cause to try to, even just a little bit, even if you just take a couple weeks out of the year to give yourself permission to go back into that state of consciousness. That's something you can try out. Let me know what you think. Head to afterlifetopics.com to learn more about this work we do here on this channel, or the Facebook group, the books like Understanding Life After Death. All of that is in the description down below when you click on Show More. I'll see you guys on the next video.